Well, good afternoon, Maverick traders. Welcome to the Currency Recap. Joe with you here on a Thursday. It's the 20th of March. You guys know how this works. I'm going to take a look at the meaningful news of the day. I'm going to take a look at some stuff technically, and if I've got some trades to share, I'll do it.
Disclaimer. This video was created for professional Forex and crypto traders. Maverick Currencies is a proprietary trading firm that employs professional traders around the world. Our traders trade firm capital and keep 70 to 80% of profits they generate. All trades and analysis in this video are for professional traders only. If you are interested in becoming a professional Forex and currency trader for Maverick, click the apply button in the video description. Let's break down what happened today.
As we move into the market analysis, folks, you're going to see we had a little bit of a risk-off day. Well, let's take a look at the news because there was a bunch out there. Can't wait to get the economic calendar. So the U.S. markets closed flat on today's session. They actually started higher. They were moving a little bit to the north side there. Take a look at the bottom bullet point. Unemployment claims were in line with expectations, uptick in Philly Fed manufacturing, and a pretty good bump in existing home sales. I'm not sure if this is kind of a last-ditch effort. I mean, these economic news when it comes to the U.S. is going to be a little bit polarizing. It should be all over the place, but it did create a little bit of a bullish move, but then we kind of faded into flat. So we had the Bank of England, no change to interest rates, in line with expectations, talking about expected tariffs. We've seen some jobless claims on that end increase subsequently, but they're pretty solid on their approach for now. The franc 25 basis point cut was in line with expectations, seeing not a lot of pressure when it comes to inflation. They're actually one of the lowest interest rates, lower than Japan. I don't think that has any sort of a difference to do with anything. The franc itself just kind of stayed flat. So there's been a whole lot of stuff coming out, and I expect more, but we got to just kind of follow the reaction. So here's the yen, the US dollar, both up higher. The franc in line, kind of flat. Euro's flat, the pound flat. The CAD had a little bit of a bounce. We got to react based on tariffs back and forth when it comes to our policies. So it's a more shorter term approach than a longer term. Looks like the CAD had a move to the upside. The risk on currencies both dropped. Aussie and the New Zealand dollar a little bit lower. Also with a little bit economic news on the Kiwi we'll take a look at in a second. Moving over to how we finished, the S&P down 0.22%. It was up a little bit. World index down as well. Crypto down. Gold flat, and oil had a pretty good bounce to the upside. Cryptocurrencies, as expected, they're either up or they're down all over the place. But all of them kind of look like they're in more of a pullback situation than a sell-off situation. So what's our outlook like? Well, it really hasn't changed from day to day. We're kind of stuck in a situation to where these markets had that pretty good bounce yesterday, and they're trying to hold in. Let's take a look at the chart real quick. One thing that I thought was a little bit ominous, and I'm going to stay on this point. I made mention of this to our equity division yesterday, is these shadows. What I don't like about them is they seem to look like they want to roll over. Today was also another ominous candle. Volume's not doing much. We could see consolidation at this level, but until this level here is actually broken, I'm not going to be comfortable being more towards the bear side than more of just kind of a push-pull area. And that's kind of what these markets are. They're super reactionary as of late. So I really can't change our outlook from yesterday. Moving over to our economic calendar, there was a whole bunch of stuff that we actually could have reacted to, but the markets didn't seem to do as such. So a little while ago, we saw the Canadian CPI in the medium and the trimmed. It was showing a little bit of an increase. We had the Bank of Japan rate stay in line. Let's just get straight to it here, folks, on Thursday's news. So that is a pretty large jump when it comes to unemployment. And this came up from 22K up to 44K. So it is increasing. However, when we go a little bit further down to the policy, or I should say the summary of the policy, we're seeing a little bit more agreeability when it comes to the outlook. So the rate was to be at 4.5 and it stayed in line, so no cut, even though we're seeing a little bit of an increase in unemployment claims on the UK side. This actually showed a little bit of strength in the pound. However, it just kind of faded throughout the day. We'll get there in a second. On the U.S. side, we had unemployment claims that were actually in line with expectations, slightly lower. I'm just going to call that in line. We did have the BOC, the Bank of Canada governor speak, and what was talked about is more of a short-term reaction than a longer-term reaction when it comes to some of the tariffs. This actually sent the Canadian dollar a little higher. Now, tomorrow, folks, we're going to see the retail sales in Canada as well, but I really, truly believe it's going to be more of policies and more of announcements, more so than some of this economic data that can be delayed. With that being said, folks, let's just jump straight into our currency analysis. We'll go ahead and just start with the yen. You can see it had a pretty good move off of the bottom here. It was pushing a little bit higher towards the end of yesterday. We actually had a pretty good surge at the end of yesterday, which we put this at a +3 versus kind of on the volatility score. It's a little bit hesitant here, so it's slowed down. Now it's not breaking down, so there's nothing I can really do past that. I'm not going to make it more bearish, but I will slightly take it from maybe a +3 down to a +2. But what I'm looking for is a retracement to the support level or some consolidation to see if we can get some more strength out of it. On the US side, we did see a little bit of a pullback as well. I mean, this was rolling over. It wasn't showing a lot of strength. We had it as a -2. We had everything's kind of flat, looking like it was going to break this floor. Lo and behold, folks, we had some good economic numbers, and it had a little bit shot to the upside. Doesn't mean it's going to sustain there. Doesn't mean that it's going to be a buy. But I had to move it back up from a -2 to a 0. And I'll tell you what, folks, the whole reason why is because at least on the velocity score, it is above this resistance area. Now, it could easily roll over and fall apart. I did like how the RSI was actually above the 50 there. So I'm going to give it a 0 here to see if it can't sustain or maybe consolidate. But it's not one of my favorite currencies. It just seems a little bit more reactionary. Moving over to the franc, you can see that we know that we had, it did cut interest rates as expected, more of a consolidation. It was a 0 yesterday, and it really hasn't done much. A little bit of a push up, a little bit of a pull down, but it seems to be pretty comfortable where it's at. Look at the RSI here, flatlining at 50. I got to keep that as 0 as well. The euro was actually showing a little bit of weakness, and I do like it, I'll tell you the truth. We had it at a -2. I'm going to keep it there. What I do like about this is the descending triangle pattern. Not a lot of action when it came to today. Just very anemic, kind of just bleeding off. It's not like it's inherently weak or falling apart. It's just not doing anything outside of what some of these other currencies are reacting to. Which once again, it's very difficult to follow along, but it is definitely one of my favorites when it comes to the weaker currencies. As of late, we'll see if it can't break that support level. Let's go to the pound. Now the pound kept interest rates the same, looking at keeping things normal in light of increasing jobless claims. It is slightly lower than we've seen on the velocity side. I see a little bit of descending highs here, but this is a huge line in the sand for me. It's hard for me to actually make this a negative. So what I did is I bumped that up a little bit. And the reason being is because here we were yesterday, but a little bit of a push to the upside. We got the RSI a little higher. The SARS are down here. We got a little bit of a turn. Now, it could definitely come back and retest. But a 0 to a +1 on the pound, I don't feel comfortable going any further outside of that because it seems to be just a little bit more of an outperformer as of late. Not the strongest, but definitely not the weakest. Moving over to the CAD, we did see a little bit of news when it comes to, hey, we're just going to sit back and see what these tariffs do. Adjustment's going to be shorter term versus the longer term when it comes to their policy rates based on some of these tariffs. So what it did is it just created a little bit of a back and forth. It didn't really give us any advantage or take anything away. I know that we had this thing a little bit more bearish because it was, kind of down in this area here, but it's kind of back up to where, about this resistance. So I just imagine this is going to be a lot more volatile. I actually bumped it up to a 0 because I'm thinking a little bit more range bound and reactionary, unfortunately, folks, than increasing or decreasing when it comes to trends. So the CAD is going to be very, very difficult to trade, or I should say pair with other currencies, because it's so news driven. So let's take a look at our risk on currencies. Let's start with the Aussie. We had the Aussie at a 0 the other day, and it just seems to slip a little bit lower. Fall in the RSI. It's turning up a little bit towards the end of the day, but a rollover here on the moving average and the SAR. So it was pretty easy for me to take this from, we had it at a 0 to a -1. The reason why I won't go more than a -1 is because I do see a pretty good support level at this area, and I know how these things can bounce back and forth. I don't really want to go completely bearish on any of the risk on currencies and then get caught in any one of these subsequent bounces. And this is what I'm talking about. Here's one there, here's one there. If you guys are playing the momentum or the volatility chart, or I should say the velocity chart, it becomes pretty difficult. So I want to make sure that this is below that area before I pair it with anything. It's just a little bit too early right now. Jump over to the Kiwi. Pretty much the same thing. It's a little stronger than the Aussie because it is actually above its resistance area. So if you are a believer of the risk on making a little bit of a comeback, that's fine. It's more of a sideways to me. I moved it over to a -1 just because of this fall. I had to kind of follow along with this RSI, but I could keep this at a 0 easily. What I didn't like was this pivot here. So if it comes back up and turns right around this level, then we have something a little bit more ominous than just pretty much sideways. But for now, I'm going to see what it does. I'm just going to keep it, a little bit, -1, just because it has that this turn here, and then a flip on the SAR, a drop in the RSI. But I'm not going to definitely use it as anything to pair against negatively against anything strong. Real quick, folks, let's just jump through our cryptocurrencies, and they're all in pullbacks. I like BTC. It's in kind of a pullback here. I'm fine with it staying kind of a +1 area. Here's Bitcoin Cash. Now this one's a little bit weaker, so I kept it at a 0 because unless it can turn and actually get above that moving average. In fact, folks, I kind of need to see this get above here before I can go positive on it. I personally think it might struggle between this area, so I gave it a 0 for now. Moving over to Ethereum, you can see kind of the same idea. Breakout, pullback, consolidating on its moving averages. Look at the RSI flattening around the 50, pushes higher, so I can give it this glass half full. I'm fine with a +1. And Litecoin, more of a consolidation, but hey, it's still above this area. The RSI is above that 50, more of a high base, or I should say consolidation breakout at the opportunity, keeping it a +1. These things kind of move in unison. So this is my outlook. Not a lot has changed. A little bit more sliding down or up, but more corrective action. I thought I'd get a little bit more when it came to a lot of the announcements out of Europe and stuff like that in the US, but everything seemed to kind of retrace. A big move to the upside or downside, and then just kind of flatlined, kind of what the US equities did as well. So overall, folks, I found plenty of news out there to create moves. Make sure they happen technically. That's the only thing you can do. I mean, there's a lot of expectations when it comes to, oh boy, this announcement should have moved it up or down. But we're seeing a lot of stuff kind of play itself out. I mean, I thought that the pound and the CAD and some of these moves would be a little bit stronger or weaker, and they actually kind of corrected and came back. So we do need to follow a little bit more on the technical side, even though we do get the advantage of something economically or some changes in the rates. It's all reactionary. I haven't seen anything really change from then. So we'll see if that continues to play itself out. Follow the overall trends, and I think that you will have a little bit more opportunity in the longer, or I should say longer plays than shorter term plays. Relative strength and weakness is always important. Very difficult to identify right now. So if you're going to trade, just make sure you have proper position sizing. And I would actually lean more towards something a little bit less, maybe some smaller positions if you want to take some stabs in these markets. All right, folks, thanks for joining me. We'll talk to you next time. Bye, everybody.